Okay, I am just making a brief video here, maybe 10 minutes long, just to explain how to get started with GeoGebra and how to use it to create the applet that's in the first lab. So the first thing is how to download GeoGebra, because there's lots of versions that you could download, and in order for me to show you how to use it, then we all need to be using the same version. And also, because I'm familiar with the different versions, I think I'm know which one is the best one to use for our purposes. So the first thing is, if you go to geogebra.org, this is what you'll see on the first page. We want to go to downloads, and like I said, there's lots of different versions that you could download. There's even more downloads here, but what we're going to want is this math calculators, because it includes the graphing calculator, the geometry calculator, and includes all of them. The other thing that's nice about the math calculator is that you could, if you have a Windows laptop or a Mac laptop, you could download it to there, or you could use the Chrome. There's a Chrome app, which I think I would avoid. I think that has a little bit less functionality, but if you're using a tablet, then you could certainly, or even your phone, you could use any of these versions here. And if you're into Linux, there's a Linux version as well. So just to be clear, what you want to download is the math calculators, and whichever version applies to the device that you're going to use. Okay, so for the first lab, I want to start with showing the finished product. This is going to be the applet that we're going to make. I want to point out a few things. So this area right here is basically your graphing window. This is kind of your algebra window, also your input bar, like you would type in here type in. I'll show you how to do that. I just want to show you the finished product first. Also, if you click down here on the little keyboard, you could use this to input, as well as just using your own keyboard. So if you'd rather, like if you have a tablet, it might be easier to pull this up. If you're working with a laptop, it might just be easier to use the keyboard that's on there. Okay, so how do we create this? Well, this right here, when we click this, this is going to be kind of your main menu as far as different things you could do. So for example, if I click on File, so I guess this is actually what it would look like. You have File, Edit, Math Apps, and I'll briefly go through these. File, you can create a new file, you can open an existing file, you can save a file. And since I'm going to ask you to upload your GeoGebra files, then save will certainly be something that you need to be able to use. Then under Edit, you can do lots of things. We'll look at some of these things when we create this. You can also, you have undo and redo, but you also have them up here as well. So a little bit of redundancy there. You can copy and paste and look at different object properties, which we will look at when we create this applet. So that's under Edit. Math Apps just gives you different tools. So this is the one that we'll use the most often. It's the graphing calculator. It's what we're looking at right now, where we have this input bar over here, the graphing window, and then we also have this if you want it. Okay, so that's the graphing calculator. There's computer algebra system. If I were to click on that, it would give me a different window. There's different things that I can do with that. But if I just go back to graphing calculator, I get this. So I'm not going to go through all of these. There's geometry, there's a 3D grapher, there's a spreadsheet. But the graphing calculator is the main one that we're going to want to use. So that's what's under Math Apps. Views, there are different views that you could have. So here, like I said, we have the input, we have the algebra view, which is over here, and we have the graphics view, which is right here. That's why those are clicked. If I were to click another one, like I could get a second graphing window, or I can get rid of it. Options, you can change the rounding or the labeling of the objects, and there's some other things you can do there. Tools we won't really use. Help you might use if you're not sure how to do something that I've not covered here. So let's go ahead, go to File, let's open a new one. I'm going to show you how to create this file. So this is asking me if I want to save the old file, which I don't, but if, in your case, if you were creating this and you wanted to save the file, then you would type in the name of your file and hit save. I don't want to save it, I just want to start with a new one. Since I'm working on a laptop, I'm not going to really use this down here, so I'm going to get rid of it. Alright, so the first thing it says that we need to do is we want to put in a function, 96, well it's 96t minus 16t squared, but GeoGebra only understands x as the input variable, so I'm going to call it 96x minus 16x, and I can use a caret and a 2 for x squared, and then I just hit enter, and here's my graph. One thing you'll notice is this is not a great graph. If you look at this, you should hopefully see, yeah, that's going to be a downward facing quadratic. And right here it almost looks like two almost parallel lines. So the way that we can get a better view is to go, this little crosshair is here. So this is another, in addition to this over here, there's another menu that we have up here, which actually allows us to interact more with the graphics view here. So this allows me to move the graphics view. So I can, what I want to do is move this out, and the main thing is I want to pull this down so I can see the top of this. So there's the top of my parabola. And I can also grab, so that was when I go onto an axis, you see I get a little arrow there, and that allows me to just move the y-axis, or down here I could just move the x-axis. If I scroll, I can move them together like this. And then if I just grab in white space and move, since I'm only mostly going to be concerned with the part of this that's in the first quadrant, I'm going to move it down here, and then I'm going to resize it so I get a good look at my parabola here. Okay. So that's the first thing, is just graphing it and getting, ultimately what I like to do is I want my graph, the part of it that I'm interested in, to fill up the screen. So I'm just going to resize it to do that. Okay, then it says to put a point on the parabola. So here's the point menu. There's actually a lot of things into this menu, but one of them is point. So I'm not going to go through all of these. You can explore these, but I just need to put a point on. So there's point, and it labels it A. Notice I had to click on, because I'm also going to put a second point, so I'll emphasize this. See how the graph kind of highlights or lights up when that's how I know that my point's going to be actually on the graph as opposed to just out in space. So when it lights up, click, it's going to label it B. The next one would be C. You can always relabel these if you want to. Like if point B is highlighted, if I went under, I don't know why it's jumping over here, but this will work. So let's see, close up File, and under Edit, I can go to Object Properties, and I could relabel it whatever I wanted. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create a line. So this is our line menu. Lots of different lines you could make here, but I just want a line that looks like just a regular old line. So I'm going to click on A, and then I'm going to click on B, and now my line is created. The other thing I want to note is the things that I'm creating in the graphics view are showing up here in the algebra view. So here's my parabola. This is the line that I just created. Here are the points and the coordinates of the points. One thing I want to point out here with the line is that this is in standard form, so it's the ax plus by equals c form. It would be nice to be able to, at a glance, look at and know the slope of this line. So I'm going to click on here so that the line is highlighted, and come over here to Object Properties. All right. So this tells me the name of my line is G. It's a line through A and B, and so on. But under algebra, I can choose how this displays. So there's standard form, y equals mx plus b form, slope, intercept form. Is if I click on that, notice now it changes it to y equals mx plus b, where that's my slope. Okay. Another way that I can view the slope that could be helpful is from this menu. So this right here is basically the measure menu. I can measure angles, I can measure lengths or distances, I can measure area, I can also measure slope. So if I click on slope and click on the line, then you can see that number is consistent with what we get here with the equation of the line. Finally, and this is really important, if I want to start moving things around on the screen, I always have to go back to this arrow menu. That's probably the thing that might take the longest to get used to if you've not used GeoGebra before, is that I have to have this arrow before I can start moving things around. If, for example, I was still on the point menu and I tried to move something, all it would do is create another point, and that's where you might use undo. If you forgot to go back to the arrow menu, sometimes you end up doing something you don't intend to do. You can just undo, and if you want to start moving things around, just come back to the arrow menu. So this is basically the applet that that you'll need in order to complete Lab 1.